All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Fintech Fridays. This is going to be a fun conversation. I've only done a couple podcasts where I've had a couple guests, and never have I had such beefy guests. So I'm excited to have my friends Andrew and Tim from Beefy join and uh, tell us their story, their journey. Thanks, guys, for coming on today.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks
Yeah,
for having us.
absolutely.
I don't know
So
if we're beefy, but we'll represent beefy for sure. So,
you're beefy in my book. That's all that matters.
Angel, you want
So
to kind
we
of jump into a little bit of the background on kind of where we came from and
Yeah, I was gonna say we met in a prior life, and you guys were brave souls to kind of leave what I call the comfy confines of corporate America to go start your own endeavor. And so let's talk about kind of what that felt like, how that kind of came about, and then we could talk about all the great things you guys are doing, of course.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Thanks again for having us on, Brian. Super excited to kind of get into it and reconnect with you, obviously. But Tim and I, in our various lives, we'd had a lot of consulting experience, either with different agencies or on our own, doing little side projects over the years. So how Tim and I met. He was chief marketing officer over at Supreme Lending, which was, I believe, a top 10 retail lender at the time. And I jumped in, and I was 23, 24 years old at the time. I like sat down and I was going over all of our marketing stuff, and I'm like, what is it that we do here, right? And like, I know a big priority for a lot of mortgage companies these days is reaching millennials, right? And reaching this younger first time homebuyer audience. And I'm sitting there and I'm hearing that, and I'm looking at marketing materials, and I'm like, maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect here, right? And so the next 2.5 years that Tim and I spent there was building out programs to get new referral relationships for the loan officers over there, build out social media campaigns, build out just kind of set it and forget it personal branding options for these loan officers, right? That also serve the purpose of connecting them to these audiences that historically there's a little bit of a gap there, right? There's some loan officers, over the last couple of years, there's been a little bit more of that, pushing towards social media. But there's a lot of these opportunities that still continue to be missed just because they're super technical, right? And there's definitely parts of financial services that are a little bit behind the times in
Yeah.
comparison to a lot of other industries. So we worked there. We built out an events program. We built out a couple other programs as well, like I mentioned on the personal branding front. But then we moved over to Synergy One Lending, and kind of in the background, we actually almost started Beefy, I think, around 3-4 years ago. We were sitting having margaritas over happy hour, and we were like, okay, if we're like naming this thing, like, what do we come up with? And I think we wrote down about 30 or 40 different names, and Beefy is the one that we stuck with. So we've been kicking the idea around for a while, and like I said, we almost jumped and did it a couple years ago. But then we worked over at Synergy One, started working with the folks over there, similar roles, Tim as CMO, myself as lead digital guy over there. And eventually, through a couple of different experiences that we had, we managed small teams, right? So any big project that we had, sometimes we'd be handed an agency and said, hey, we signed you guys up, work with these dudes. And we're like, okay, I guess we'll make the best of this relationship then. And every single time that there was a project that was outsourced to an agency, we would sit down and it would be like a 6 to 12 month agreement that we'd get locked into, right? There'd be a lot of hype around what they'd promised at the beginning. And then 2 to 3 months, we'd start running some split tests of our own and be like, okay, guys, we like what we're doing over here. We love the results there. Can you help us scale that? What additional kind of components do you think we should add to this? And we'd kind of get some blank stares and some looks, and it's like, maybe we do more of what you guys are doing, and we're over here like, wait, but that's what we're paying you to do, right? You're
Right.
the agency. We're hiring you not just to be push button ponies. We're hiring you to kind of scale and help us see opportunities. And so we've seen that with one agency. It was, I think, 2 years ago, and then a couple other agencies over the course of the last couple of years, where it was really like they kept coming back to the contract, and it was all about getting clients into contracts. And then it's like, well, your name's on the dotted line, you've got
Yeah.
6 to 12 months with us, let's make something work. And we just thought, here's a huge opportunity for us to jump in and provide a lot of transparency and accountability, and just go completely month to month in a similar model, right? So not only were we out competing a lot of these agencies with our small internal teams, But we thought it would be great to just jump in and say, hey, everything that we do is month to month with our clients, right? So you're working with us because you see the value. Obviously, we're going to try to drive as much value as possible because of that model, right? Tim and I can't just take, 3 weeks off. We lose all of our clients, right? That's not how our business model works. And our clients tend to like that. But really, that's where the tagline for Beefy came up, or how we came up with that was no BS, no contracts, just media results, right? And it all goes back to it's super performance based, because if we're not performing, right, frankly, we don't want to be involved with stuff that's not working, right? That's, I
Right.
think, kind of the typical agency model is we get you into contracts, we'll flood your office with an army of 15 account execs and make you feel special. But at the end of the day, like, maybe it's not super special what we're providing. So that's a little bit behind the name and the tagline, and probably a lot of the Beefy spiel there. But yeah, that's how Beefy started, and obviously we're less than a year into this thing right now.
That's super helpful. I want to just something you said right at the onset was like so visual for me. I'm a mid-50s guy, been in knocking around in this industry for a long time. A lot of the population of originators is kind of probably closer to my age than we'd like to admit. Yet the first time homebuyer segment is who they are. There's somebody that's not like me, right? There's somebody that I can't necessarily connect with. And you sat down as a young 20-something-year-old at Supreme and quickly figured out that you didn't understand the message, and yet you're kind of the target audience. So it's super cool that you had that kind of awareness and, frankly, the guts to kind of call it out. But I think it also speaks to Tim, to your leadership to kind of, I'm guessing what happened there, that was like the start of what's this great partnership over the years, right? Where you've got a lot of trust in each other, and it's super cool to just kind of see that kind of come to life.
Yeah, for sure. So, and awesome background info, Andrew, as usual, do a much better job than I ever do. So I'm a natural contrarian, as much as my parents hated that when I was growing up, because I literally questioned everything, as Andrew will tell you too. But so one of the things for me, and I'll come back to Andrew in just a second here, but one of the things for me that I've been kicking around the idea of wanting to start my own thing for like a decade or more. I've been in this space for a long time. In mortgage, I've been in for a long time, almost 15 years now, I guess, going on close to that. But before that, I was heavily in digital marketing, and that was my whole world was digital, and so heavy in search, kind of at the preface of social before it kind of became anything. And then evolved with that, obviously, to this day, to what we see now, and how we leverage it in a big way, obviously, with Beefy clients. But for me, the contrarian part, man, there's been so many instances, I've lost track, literally dozens of instances over the years where, with that contrarian mentality, I'm like dealing with our vendors, dealing with inherited contracts, maybe from agencies or whatever it is from a leadership perspective that you inherit, and that's fine. So, and you kind of work through those, right? You keep the ones that are working, and the ones that aren't working, you kind of reevaluate. But I always kind of look at it when we're dealing with marketing agencies and vendors of that nature, like okay, can I do something in house where it's I always look for the no brainer, right? Always,
Yeah.
whether it's consumers, referral partners, support for our LOs, whatever it is, like let's create the value that is an absolute no brainer. They won't mention cost. They won't mention any of this other stuff because we've created something that's so valuable that the cost is like well worth it, So whatever that might not be money, it might be just time or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But so coming kind of full circle here. So when Andrew came in, I was kind of looked at this for many years now. With okay, I could probably build something in house that can compete with at the same cost or outperform agencies or other vendors that we work with. And if we can't, great, that's what we want to pay them for sure. And we'll do that and scale it. But if we can do it in house, it's such a huge value add, a retention play for folks that are obviously trying to not only recruit but retain their top talent and top producers. So, all of those kind of went into it, but and hence obviously the drive to kind of start our own thing ultimately. So, we
Yeah.
finally jumped off and went in and did that, which has been fun. So, but yeah, absolutely. When Andrew came into the world of mortgage, he was very new, didn't understand all the acronyms, 5 million acronyms that we have, and the agencies, the enterprise government, enterprises that we are involved with it, secondary market fund, all the other stuff that goes into this stuff, and then you get into the fun stuff like compliance.
Yeah.
All that stuff, which is fantastic, right? Because now he's got ideas, he wants to read a table, and I'm like, man, I love it. Compliance will hate it. We can't do it. They're like, what? Okay, we go back to the drawing board. But he's come a long ways, and what I saw in Andrew, literally from like the first week he onboarded, and honestly in his interview, he's a young version of me. He's got drive and hustle and all that stuff, which is fantastic. Some of the intangibles, but it's the understanding of social and digital kind of collectively, and those digital channels, and how do you take a client in our position as corporate, mortgage folks, like our client is our LO, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
top producer LO, or it's a mid producer LO that we want to drive to a top producer category. We want that person or that tier of folks that we're supporting. We want them to be in President's Club. Like, how do we do that? How do we move the needle on that? So, and that's when, I saw him with his understanding of all this stuff, and he and I talk the same language because we're just both digital first and foremost, versus, more traditional marketers in the space, which, tend to be, the space is a little archaic, obviously, even with
Yeah.
all the, prop tech and fintech and all that stuff going on now, it's still archaic. And so, we're coming a long ways, but we still have a long ways to go. So now it's kind of like we've got beefy, and now for our clients, we kind of act as we see ourselves as more of a bolt-on, right?
Yeah.
So, and so for us, I wanted to create, so did Andrew, and we did. We wanted to create something like, especially in this market, this amazing market that we're in this amazing market that we're in, we still wanted the no-brainer, and we can easily do that, right? And it's just, all it is applying certain very tactical digital elements, multi-channel digital elements to folks to drive whatever their objective and end goals are. Like,
Yep.
we have top 1% producers on the real estate side and the mortgage side, and they have different objectives. Like, some of them, one of them, a primary objective is driving recruits, because they're like gangbusters. They're just going, and they want to sign up as many as they can. They want to take market share while everyone else is retreating. And that's
Yep.
the mentality most of our clients have, is that mentality. They're like going in because they want to either position themselves for a lot more market share coming up in 6 to 12 months, or they see an opportunity where everyone's retracting right now, and I can jump in and right now steal a point, 2 points in my market. That's a huge deal for me, because, and it's easier to do. It's easier, and
Yeah.
it's actually cheaper to do now too, because that inventory, comes into play as well. So it's a supply demand thing on the digital side, just like anything else. So interesting market that we're in, but we designed and developed the no-brainer kind of packages to help these guys, where cost wasn't going to be an issue. It was super
Yep.
cost effective, but really the big thing is, and Andrew hit on this, is it's the results. It's like, we're going to drive results with no contracts, and that's it. And you're going to come back, and we're going to retain you forever and ever, and we're actually going to scale up everything we're doing for you, because you're going to see a lot of great results.
I love that approach, because you guys, you made a bet on yourselves when you did this to begin with, but you continue to place bets on yourself, structuring your relationships in that manner, right? Because you could easily just go down the tried and true, contract, extended contract agency path, but instead you're saying, no, you're gonna pay us when we perform based on these preset expectations, and it just forces you every day to get up and frankly try to kick ass, right? Which is a kind of a great way to, I think it's a great way to start a business, because you're gonna likely, in every scenario, you're gonna outperform the the dollars that are in the contract. You're gonna inherently bring more value than they're paying you, which is going to lead to the next engagement and the next engagement and the next engagement. I want
Yeah.
to talk about I want to talk about the contrarian comment because I'm super curious kind of how you think about how you guys are thinking about what's going on right this second, right? We're in a pretty brutal, real estate finance market. We all know that. Yet what I've seen in the last, 3, 4, 5 months, maybe 6 months is an explosion on social media with, individual loan officers and real estate professionals. Everyone's got the camera in front of them and they're doing their thing, right? Which is great. We've all been saying, get out, put yourself out there, create more content, build your personal brand. I'm just curious, at what point does this thing like oversaturate? And I'm sure you guys are thinking about what the next play is off of that, because there is a lot of people, walking around with a camera in front of their face, walking and talking and putting content out there.
Yeah, let me hit it first, I guess, and then Andrew definitely chime in because he'll have a lot of good takeaways for this too. But so I don't think it's going to oversaturate anytime soon, honestly. And there's a lot to kind of unravel from that question or that tee up,
Yeah.
right? Because you can talk about, just for one, like just organic content and placing that organic content out there. Organic content is not going to drive much exposure at all, right? It just isn't. And that's because Zuckerberg needs his earnings to go well, right? Like, I mean, it is what it is. It's capitalism, and
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. So we moved away from, obviously, like almost 10 years ago now. We moved away from the spamming out your connections, and if you have 100,000 connections, fantastic. All of them see your content. Well, like now you're going to be lucky if 2%, 3%, maybe if you got really ultra high engagement, you may see as high as maybe 7-8%, maybe. But that's very difficult. And that's on one platform, obviously. Then you got
Yep.
TikTok. It's Wild West on TikTok. TikTok, give us $50, we'll give you, a million views. Great. It's not going to drive revenue or kind of top dollar stuff for you. Then that's one thing you need to think about. So it kind of depends on the channels, the platforms, and all that. I do, again, though, I don't think it's going to be overly saturated with folks. I love seeing like all these people piling on because, frankly, they should be. You absolutely should be. I don't care if you're, 80 years old or 20 years old. Like, if you're in the business, any business, like, you should be getting on there and doing some things. And there are lots of other little things that I think can drive and need to be thought of about how you scale content to be put on different channels as well. Because like one thing I always say is we can build next week we can drop the latest greatest Amazon killer website, like literally the best site on the planet Earth ever been built, right? And it has no traffic. And that's the same thing that's happening with organic content,
Yep.
right? It's like you're not getting the views or the eyes on it that you really want to because of the way the algorithms work. It just is what it is. But so that gets into kind of a huge specialty and kind of expertise of ours for a long, long period of time, which is paid distribution. Paid distribution is by far, obviously, we want to hit people for all of our clients. We always say, what's your goal or objectives? So let's meet those, and then back into those. Obviously, how are we going to do that? And then we absolutely want to always take advantage of where our people are going to be. Like, where are your folks? I don't care if they're realtor partners of yours, other referral partners, if they're actual consumers, if they're past clients, you have a database to work with. Great, even easier. Let's match those up and run targeting those guys as well on all these channels. But what I'm getting at is they're on search, streaming, and social. Period. Like, that is where people live and absorb their information. And so I said a little while ago, like, we act as a kind of a great bolt on to things that are already going on out there. Because if you have a CRM, you have email campaigns, fantastic. Don't turn those off, but bolt on to a much bigger extent in terms of like what your actual messaging is, and start tailoring that message down to whoever the client is, right? We have stuff, folks that are at the brand level, and we have folks that are at a brand slash, team level. And then we have folks that literally want personal branding.
Yep.
Like we have a top 1% realtor, for example, and she wants her personal brand out there and saturate her market. So, and so that's a different objective and a different approach, right? So, but on the paid distribution side, that is where the biggest bang for the buck from a marketing cost perspective is, uh, bar none, like literally bar none. And I've spent millions and millions of dollars over the years, so I can say that. And I've seen it from the inside, I've seen it from the outside, I've seen it as a consultant. So, and I've worked with so many different agencies to drive and push all that ad spend out there. So I'm coming from a spot where I've seen a lot of that stuff, and there's nothing, and it always irks me, and it pains me to see really amazing content from a lot of people. They have like full production kind of video content, for example, and then they'll have, a couple views or whatever it is, right? And it's like, man, you gotta get into some paid distribution. So anyway, Andrew, I know you got a lot to say on that stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as black and white as paid social and streaming good, organic social and streaming bad, right? That's not what Tim's saying, and not our approach either. I think that there's some people you'll see kind of the top performers when it comes to social media and real estate, mortgage, or just brands in general, right? That will get a lot of sort of viral content, or they'll have a more established brand on TikTok, right? Or on LinkedIn, or on a specific platform. Maybe it's like TikTok and Instagram Reels. Usually it's like a combination of one or two platforms like that. And so most of the people that we talk to, and we kind of see 3 or 4 buckets, if you will, of just people at large, but especially in real estate and mortgage. There's kind of the first chunk, which is, I'm doing nothing on social. Maybe I think it's important, maybe I don't, but like there's just nothing happening there, right? So there's just no activity whatsoever. And kind of the second bucket of that, I'd say I know that social is important. I'm doing a little bit of stuff from time to time. It's mostly organic stuff that's going out. There's not a lot of database campaigns or paid support behind any of this stuff, but I see the value of it, right? And then I think there's kind of the third bucket, which is going to be those people that they see the value of social. They've got like some video editing capabilities, or they've got a team behind them. They're pushing out content on a regular basis. Maybe they get a little bit of visibility. Their personal network is really strong on these platforms, right? And then I think there's kind of the fourth bucket, which is, they're working on content on their own, right? They've got a strong sense of a personal network, but there's still opportunity there where they're bolting on with our programs, or along those lines, essentially what we offer, and leveraging that with paid distribution to make sure that they're not just reaching the people that they're friends with on Facebook, right? Or they're only reaching their TikTok followers, or they're only reaching more of a B2B audience on LinkedIn. Like, don't get me wrong, it's great to have a amazing TikTok audience, right? There's value in that, and I've seen some people out there. There's one that I'm thinking of. I think she's on the East Coast in Delaware, that provides, like, she earns most of her business through her TikTok and Instagram Reels channels, and I'm like, that's great, that's fantastic, right? Now there's also these other channels called LinkedIn and Facebook and just general digital advertising that can help you reach a much bigger audience if you scale that appropriately and hit people that you're not connected with, right? That aren't following you on these different platforms, that help you just take all of the great stuff that you're doing and help scale that by 10 to 100x if you do it the right way, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of help people at all these different places. Obviously, if you don't think that social is important, I've got other questions to ask.
Can't be helped.
Exactly, right? I think I saw some stat. It's from the Mortgage Bankers Association. This is maybe a year or two old, but they were saying something like 20 to 30% of loan officers would consider themselves decently active on social media. And I think that has probably increased a little bit over the last year or so, because
They have
people
more time.
a lot more time on their hands, right? And so you're seeing, to your point earlier in our conversation, you've got more people jumping in. They're creating content. They're kind of putting their feelers out there in terms of how to start their first videos, right? Talk to first-time home buyers, right? And so that's great. I love that. To Tim's point, I think there's not any sort of concern on our side for oversaturating things because most people aren't using paid distribution, right? They're
Right.
only utilizing their personal networks, and what you're doing to reach your personal network and get 60, 150 likes on a really great post that you have from a strong personal network is very different than, maybe you get a couple thousand views associated with that.
Yeah.
You're strengthening your repeat and referral business for people that follow you. But like I said, what about the people that don't follow you, right?
I
What about
love
the
that.
people in your local community that have no idea who you are? And if you're really as good as you are, like, why wouldn't you want to expand that well beyond your personal network to people that are in that same bucket? And we can do a lot of that with paid advertising that you just will never achieve within a several month span like we can with paid advertising versus, usually the couple year span is what we see for people that are posting every single day. They've got high quality, high value content that they're pushing out there. So,
Yep.
like I said, there's nothing against that. It's just a completely different play that takes either a lot longer if you're going to do it the right way, or it tends to be a source of burnout. I think for a lot of people on social media where they just see low views,
Yeah.
low engagement, and they're like, well, I'm just going to give this up. And
This
it
doesn't
becomes
work.
a point of disappointment instead of
Yeah.
a point of opportunity for a lot of these folks.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll just add on one quick thing to that too. That so not only can you leverage social in a big way to go outside of who you're already connected with, but we have clients that don't even have any social, believe it or not. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, we're going to approach it a little bit differently because obviously they, for whatever reason, don't need or want to be out there or whatever have you, right? Like whatever the case may be. But it's something that we still can go out there from a paid perspective and help them with the content creation and all that stuff, as we do with just or kind of organic posts scheduled for clients as well. But we're going to use that and leverage that on a paid perspective while we build out an organic channel for them because they're not even on anything, so they're not connected to
Right.
anybody. And yet you can still saturate your entire market if you really wanted to, without even having a channel. So that's another, option that's available and opportunity out there for leveraging social for sure. And again, biggest bang for the buck by far. Because you can talk about
I,
like TV and search and lead gen and
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. We support all that stuff too. Love it. That's, my whole background with search, but for eons. But they're more expensive channels, so
Yep.
so there's a time and a approach for all of that stuff.
Couple follow-up questions. One was, are you guys also involved in creative? So let's just say somebody comes to you and they want to, optimize their channels, but they need creative help. Is that something you guys also will do for them?
Yeah, so I'll give you a recent example. I think that there's a lot of tools out there for people that just need to have a presence, right? Canva is a great tool, Subtitle's a great tool. I think it's easier to have access to some of these tools than it has
Yeah.
been in the past. So I think those are all great opportunities. I think where you can really start differentiating yourself, if you're a loan officer, if you're a real estate agent, you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, sometimes there's a little bit more of a barrier to using those kind of tools than there is for people in their 20s and 30s that are just getting started and actively use Instagram, TikTok, and all these
Yeah.
platforms, and are very familiar with kind of editing things on their own, designing things on their own that look good, feel modern, and are great just from an organic social perspective, right? So back to your original question. So there was a financial services client of ours. They had been in the business for, I think, over 20 years. And they had, I think, 2 or 3 videos on their YouTube account, right? So big opportunity, right? And so through a collection of just some online interviews that we did over Zoom, video testimonials that we collected through some of our video testimonial tools that we have access to and build out for clients, and on location shoots, we built them out. So now they've got 40 to 50 videos on their YouTube account, and they've got about 15 video testimonials, and they've got a whole bunch of video pieces that talk about what their value prop is, right? The story of their company, what they do, and just really putting some personalization behind the brand. So they're not just the name. Right
Yep.
now, someone can go through and watch several hours worth of video content that's really talking about, not just in their words, but in their customers' words, right? What they
That's
love about
that's
their
social proof,
specific
right? That's the
platform.
social proof of yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I made a mental note because that's something that I've got to work on our side is kind of having having those testimonials. This question's back to you, Tim. You talked about you gave a great example of a content creator who goes out and buys all the best equipment. They got the best camera, best microphone, whatever. They got the soundproof room, and then they're getting 30 views and one like, and it's their great aunt that liked the post. What would be your advice to kind of someone that's getting started out, balancing the infrastructure, the technology to do what you need to do versus investing in distribution? How would you kind of balance that?
Yeah, so I've got to tell you, I've never been a huge pro. I'm a contrarian and I'm cheap. So every CEO I've ever worked for, they've loved those traits. So
Yeah.
I can be blunt sometimes. They don't like that sometimes, but they like the to get hit upside the head with some honesty too. So because they need that to make some smart decisions going forward.
Right.
But so that said, my cheapness is coming out now too, because like everywhere I've ever worked, I've always, and we talked a little bit about this on the top of the call, like that startup mentality. So I've managed a team of 25 people, and I had my own analytics team on top of that at one of the places a few places ago, and so even with them though, I'm like, okay, we can cut kind of production costs down if we do X, Y, and Z. We can do this and that. So to answer your question though, where do you balance that all out? How do you balance that? How do you get into this stuff? Honestly, it's way more, I think, impactful when they see the human element. Literally, bring your phone up, start doing something, and you can throw it into subtitle, as Andrew mentioned, or many other apps that you want. We leverage several, obviously, and some of the stuff that we do, but a lot of it though can be right from your phone. Like technology today, which is one of the great things in terms of kind of where we are today. Obviously, the market is a bear. However, again, people are retracting. So when they're retreating or retracting out of it, you can go into it. And to your point, Brian, earlier, you have a little bit more time. So I try to invest the time. Try to put something together where it's like, okay, I've got maybe it's a third of one day a week, and that's it. And that's what I'm going to start with, and start off with maybe like a video a week or whatever that is. It doesn't really matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so to answer the question back to how do you balance that with the paid distribution side, I think after if we take on a new client and that client wants to go saturate their market, you can only do that one way, and that is paid distribution. So that's going to have to be a piece of it. But then you also have to balance out obviously with like what content are we putting out there, right? And so that's where you kind of get into some things that I think you can baby step into it. To be honest with you, you don't have to go all in and say, half of a week, every single week now is going to be my life for the next 6 months, and half a week now I'm dedicating to like all of my content production.
Yeah.
I just don't think you have to do that. So, and I'll give you an example, a real world example. So, Andrew just launched a newsletter that he puts out kind of roughly once a week, once every a week and a half, something like that. It's really good. If you haven't seen it, like definitely sign up for it on LinkedIn. So he did that, and he was starting to get some really cool results off of that. So we were looking at that too from a perspective of, okay, well, can we leverage that potentially to do something else with some other clients, and just for some of the stuff we're doing with BP. And so I'm a big LinkedIn nerd, but I've also been relatively inactive on the platform for several years now. So I kind of got back into it fairly recently. But one thing I did do is I started a newsletter following Andrew, and within 2 weeks, I think it was like 13 days, I had 2,300 subscribers or something. So literally, those are push notifications going out. So it's not just video on Instagram and that kind of thing you have to worry about. There are some things that you can do. And when I say newsletter, it sounds like way more complicated than it is.
Yeah.
Literally, mine are like a half a paragraph and a
Right.
picture, and that's kind of it. And that is getting a lot of engagement. And then what you can do is you can start taking that kind of thing, that kind of example, and take that newsletter style or whatever that is, and take something that you can scale to some of these other channels in a big way, organically and paid distribution wise. So like LinkedIn, or sorry, not LinkedIn, but Reels. Look at Shorts from YouTube. Huge opportunity there because they're not trying to compete with TikTok. Obviously, TikTok's another one that you can throw on there, and you can do this like without having to recreate
Yeah.
every single piece to format, right? So there are ways to do it, right? And it just kind of depends on, how much time and all that you want to put into it. But you really, to be honest with you, you can overcomplicate everything, and a lot of people do, and they get overwhelmed, right? We all do, so that's normal. They get overwhelmed, and then they just never do it, and they always
Yeah.
talk about it, and they always know that they probably need to do something. They just never jump. So I say baby step it on the content side, but definitely pair up with someone who can really create a lot of uh, exposure for you with that content in your local markets that you know you want to be participating in and actively in. So with because we're going to get them in front of realtors, you want to get them in front of your other referral partners, consumers, obviously, your past data, all your past clients and that data, and prospective buyers as well. So and recruits, by the way.
Well, there is so much here. We have to do a second episode because I could kind of riff on this topic, easily for the rest of the day. And I'm just myself diving into this kind of space and trying to grow our little business here at FinLocker. Um, this has been super interesting, very helpful. Folks, if you're out there and you're looking for someone to help you kind of either get started in digital marketing, or if you're been dabbling at it and not seeing the results, you need to get beefy, right? Get beefy. That's the tagline.
I think that was our
Tim,
actual
Andrew,
first tagline, by the way. So yeah, I love
is it? Yeah, I remember that. I
One of the
remember
original ones, yeah.
that.
I think
Well,
that one had a lot of gym and fitness related keywords to it. So we're like,
yeah.
okay, maybe we come up with a different one. So
Yeah.
Well, I love what you guys are doing. I think it's super needed in this space. I actually think as tough as the market is, doing what you're doing is needed right now. And so, people should be paying attention to what you're saying and partnering with you. And to me, based on what you described, it's a low risk investment, to partner with you guys. So I appreciate our relationship. I appreciate you guys coming on and sharing your story, and looking forward to watching the great success with Beefy.
Awesome. Sure appreciate it as usual. Love the partnership as we've had for probably 2+ years now. So
Yeah.
love that. We'll continue that obviously. So love likewise seeing all the success out of FinLocker too. And you've been doing fantastic, man, because I'm seeing your stuff all over the place now. It's good.
Yeah. I probably need your help, so I'll be calling you after.
We're here.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for
All right.
joining this episode. Come back next Friday for another episode of FinTech Fridays.